So we insist in our interaction with other nations, particularly in the commercial area, that we give value for value. We want to drink coffee. We'll pay you for it. No problem. These are the kind of things that we've got to infuse our trade policy with these ideas. We've got to infuse our policy even outside the commercial arena in this area. Diplomatically, we've got to understand that it's not about imposing will on other countries through economic warfare, like all these sanctions that we're so fond of. These are the kind of things that they've got to mark us. And these are the kind of things that we've got to keep our mind on. Equity has got to be how we interact with the rest of the world. And I'm telling you that many of the problems that we are facing today find their roots in colonial relationships that are fundamentally premised on inequity. And the reactions of people in what we used to refer to as the third world sometimes are human enhancing, are life enhancing, and sometimes they're ugly and reactive and revenge oriented. We don't operate on the basis of illusion that everybody is going to operate in the best intentions and in the most well-motivated way. But we do understand that much of what we're seeing is a reaction to historic colonial relationships and neo-colonial relationships. When we discuss Iran, we should be discussing what happened in 1953. And that does not require us to say that the oppression of the Green movement in Iran is just fine. We can reject that abuse of human rights as well. But we have to understand that we lit a fuse in 53 that exploded in 79, and we're all dealing with that problem right now. And we have got to set the relationship right. And you can't tell me that 30 years of not talking and 30 years of sanctions and then a few months of dialogue is going to solve the problem. It's going to take a little longer than that to work out the problems. And we should not allow these neocons to abandon dialogue because it didn't work within a finger snap. We gave a long time to hostility and aggression. We didn't give much time at all to dialogue. And then we set time limits on it. We shouldn't set any time limits on it. And we also shouldn't believe that somehow Ahmadinejad is, a great moral force in the world. We don't have to say because we made mistakes in the past that every reaction to them is a positive and good one. We can maintain a certain level of moral consistency. Let me say that I need your help on HRES 1016. That's the Global Marshall Plan. The plain fact is Americans don't feel secure until the rest of the world feels like they're getting a fair shake. And this is about equity again. The United States of America, we can do this. Last year on my trip to Dadaab region, which is the northern region of Kenya, in Kenya, I saw effective health interventions helping people in extremely vulnerable situations. I also found an incredible people of Dadaab working to reduce HIV transmission, improve nutrition, train midwives, and in Africa, I also saw great progress in reducing mother-to-child transmission of HIV. I also visited a town of AIDS orphans and women struggling to care for them. Kenya is a great case study for a smart global health policy, which we need to be in the mix of guiding. Not as charity, but in a way to help elevate that bottom billion or more so that they can interact as peers on a commercial scale with the rest of the world. This partnership is just one example of how you and I can shape our nation's foreign policy, and we need to be active and engaged because the people who don't agree with us are active and engaged. Trust me on that. There is no way to improve the life chances of the burgeoning youth population in our world that are undereducated, underemployed, unengaged without a commitment to equity. And so I urge you to help me advance this idea of equity within the context of the Global Marshall Plan. Let me hurry up. Second, I want to talk about generosity. Generosity is an often underutilized concept that is incredibly important. Being generous does not mean you're a sucker, does not mean you're a spendthrift, does not mean you're not careful with your money. Being generous originates in the spirit. generosity of spirit, faith, confidence that there's enough for everybody. We all can eat. Just a little more water in the gumbo, and we're all going to eat just fine. That's the idea. Generosity. A strategy of generosity demands that we as Americans and as progressives need to be far more inclusive and diverse in our thinking about development. And like I said, I'm talking a lot about trade, but that goes equally for security and everything else. The prominent economist and philosopher Amartya Sen writes that a focus on the world as one is not enough for global justice. At the same time, insisting that global justice means treating every single group or country as if they were absolutely unique, as a strategy of inclusion rather than exclusion rather than inclusion. A strategy of generosity needs to be based on the idea that we as humans are part of a web of giving and learning relationships. Taking generosity and justice as guiding principles for our foreign policy means challenging the view that Americans are uniquely entitled to the global opportunities and resources. For example, claiming the oil under the sand that those people over there are sitting on belongs to us. We've got to stop that idea. It's an ugly one. Why do we insist on believing that those who live outside of our borders are not okay, not entitled, unless they profess the same worldview that we do? For that matter, how can we be generous so long as 33 cents of every federal dollar that we pay goes to pay for war, and not one penny is spent on only 1 penny is spent on diplomacy and the peaceful prevention of deadly conflict? Wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are robbing the poor at the very time we need every dollar to sustain life and promote justice. A generous progressive worldview promoting justice accepts that legitimate power and authority must be accountable to community, and the rule of law must matter to the powerful as well as to everyone else. Finally, let me talk about engagement. Progressive foreign policy means engaging with those with whom we disagree and sticking to the hard work at every policy level. President Obama's nuclear summit, I believe, is a symbol and an example of the U.S. trying to work together with other countries rather than dictating to them. Congress seems to be in a rut of passing resolutions of condemnation as if the United States has the right to determine right and wrong for the rest of the world. President Obama's commitment to engage in discussion with other countries and pursue areas of common concern is something that we as progressives can and should, in my opinion, support. Doing government right is hard work, and it requires time and commitment. We Americans have grown used to living in a culture where instant gratification comes at the push of a button, but real change, real politics requires slow negotiation, compromise, grace under pressure, and some old-fashioned stick-to-itiveness. I look forward to working with you over the long haul to promote equity, generosity, and engagement in pursuit of a progressive foreign policy. But in the meantime, I need you to make sure that your member of Congress is a signatory to the Global Marshall Plan. I need you to say that every single one of them needs to get their name on it so that we can really let our rhetoric align with our action. And I want you to know that Rabbi Lerner, who basically wrote the Global Marshall Plan, and all I did is put my name on it and introduce it as a bill, is a fellow who I believe has a lot to say to us. And so I'm very thankful to you, Rabbi. And I also just want to say before I give up the microphone that I happen to know that you have had to borrow, I'm a Muslim, but to borrow a phrase from the Christian community, you have had to bear the cross. So here's a Muslim telling a Jew he has to bear the cross. So, and bearing the cross means, and that many of you know, that if you're going to walk a righteous path of justice and love and generosity, there are people who find that incredibly threatening. And along the way, they will speak evil of you, they will threaten you, they will threaten your life, and they will make life hard for you. But faith will carry you through, my brother. And I want you to know that your courage and commitment encourages us. And the fact is that if you will stand and brave these elements, we will stand with you. God bless you and thank you.